Welcome to Mr. Biz Radio, biz talk for biz owners. If you're ready to stop faking the funk and take your business onward and upward, this show is for you. And now, here's Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Biz Radio with me, Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth. And we're going to talk about something this week that impacts everyone. We've got an absolute expert. We're going to talk more about it, but he was actually nice enough to send me a copy of his book. We're going to talk a lot about this, but to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about, the title of his book is The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success, a blueprint for resilience and enduring fulfillment. So we're going to talk this week with Dr. Emilio Justo. He is a renowned ophthalmologist and cosmetic surgeon specializing in refractive cataract surgery and COT laser
blepharoplasty.
I practiced it like 4 times before we get. With nearly 50,000 procedures performed since 1989, as a Cuban refugee who immigrated to the United States at the age of 3, Dr. Justo's journey underscores the transformative power of patience, perseverance, and self-discipline. His August 2023 TEDx Cherry Creek High School talk, Delayed Gratification, Your Superpower to Success, has amassed over 6.5 million views, making it the 3rd most viewed TEDx video globally in 2023. And his best-selling book that I just mentioned, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success, followed in June 2024 and became an Amazon #1 bestseller. And then in February of this year, earlier this year, 2024, Dr. Justo delivered a second TEDx talk, Unleashing the Drive Within, the Obsession Advantage to Unprecedented Success. And that's garnered over 2.4 million views so far. Dr. Justo, welcome to Mr. Biz Radio.
Thank you so very much, Ken. It's really a delight and pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I know it took us a while. I think it's been a few months we've had you scheduled here, but really looking forward to this because I think this is something, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but especially in today's day and age where everything is just, it's so instant, and you pick up your phone and they talk about video views and people, you got to catch someone's attention within the first 3 to 5 seconds, or they just skip past it. And I'll admit, I mean, and this is sort of a tangent that we're going to get into, but I think at least related enough to mention is, I'll admit, if there's a video I see online, I'm scrolling through or whatever, and I click on the video, if it's not someone that I follow or I know or whatever, and it's like 8 minutes long, I just skip it. It's like, that's too long. Like, really, it's 8 minutes, and you could also speed it up to make it, go pretty much faster too. So, but before we dive into all that, Dr. Justo, tell us about your journey. Like, you've done a lot of amazing things. Tell us about your journey.
Well, as you mentioned, Ken, I am a Cuban refugee. My parents and I fled Castro's communist regime when I was 3 years old. And unlike many Cubans who fled via Miami, we actually were able to leave via Mexico, as my father had buried his money in the backyard when Castro took over and created a new currency, and he was able to purchase airline tickets on the black market after befriending a Canadian diplomat in Cuba. So we left through Mexico, and we were there 6 months. And then back in those days, this is in the mid-1960s, back in those days, there were many church organizations that were sponsoring Cuban refugees' entry into the United States. That was the legal way of doing it. And the church organization that sponsored us actually settled us into Gary, Indiana. And you're probably old enough to remember Gary being the home of the Jackson 5 and Michael Jackson. And they were just getting their start when we landed there. My grandparents came over a few months later. Their church sponsored them into a little college town in Northwest Missouri called Tarkio College, Missouri. And because my parents were starting all over in Gary, we came over with nothing but the clothes on our back. My father was working 2 full-time jobs. My mother, who had her doctorate in education from the University of Havana, went 3 hours south to study all over again in a new language at Indiana University in Bloomington. And they sent me to grow up with my grandparents from kindergarten through the end of 4th grade in Tarkio College. We lived in a dorm. My grandfather worked as an accountant for the college, and that was an incredible upbringing, man. I just have such great memories being surrounded by college students all the time. It really set the tone. Then in 5th grade, we moved back to Indiana. I was blessed to go to a parochial school, even after having a medical crisis my freshman year where I was out of school for 2.5 months and had 3 surgeries. Miraculously, somehow I was able to become valedictorian, and then subsequently went to your favorite school, Ken, the University of Michigan, where I got into an accelerated 6-year pre-medical medical program and finished medical school at the tender young age of 23, which is almost unheard of. And then after 4 years of ophthalmology residency in Washington, D.C., I started my private practice out here in Arizona, just outside Phoenix, at the age of 27. And here I am 36 years later, still working full time, enjoying every minute of it.
Amazing. I can't imagine. So, we talk all the time about the Jim Ron. You're the product of the 5 people you're around. Growing up as a young boy on a college campus, like you said, being in that academic setting, being around people that presumably, right, most people going to college have big aspirations and ambitions, that had to drive a lot of sort of your mindset as an early, as a young child.
I think so, Ken. I really do. I mean, just when you're surrounded in that environment, it's an educational environment, plus the fact that my grandparents and my parents always emphasized education, just in general, right? It's the immigrant mentality, right? When you come over as an immigrant, that's why if you look historically at so many immigrants that have come to the United States, right, a huge number of them really become outstanding citizens and do great things in their life because there's this grit that's ingrained in you as an immigrant. And really, I have my parents to thank for that because they never pushed me or arm twisted me. They just kept telling me how important it was to get a good education in life. And that was their emphasis. And I respected them immensely. I loved them immensely. I grew up as an only child, and they were essentially my best friends. And so they did not lead me astray. They really pointed me in the right direction.
That's interesting. My grandfather on my mom's side, who dropped out of school or out of high school, lied about his age to go into the service, ended up years later going back and getting his GED or whatever. But I remember when I was maybe 20 or so, I was in my undergrad, and I remember he and I would sit on his front porch and have these long talks or whatever, just the two of us. And I remember asking him, like, we called him Pap. I said, Pap, give me like one piece of advice. And my grandfather, who dropped out of school, high school, and went back and got his GED, his advice to me was, you got to get education. You got to get education or training, because that's something, no matter what happens, no one can ever take it away from you. And correct. I found it very interesting because here's someone who seemingly didn't appreciate education and the fact that he dropped out of high school before he even graduated. But here he was, years and years and decades later, telling his grandson, you got to get education. And maybe I assume it's because he learned some lessons from that, because he ended up going back and trade schools and things like that. But it was very interesting to hear sage advice from an elder to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. And that's the same thing I would hear, that, no one can ever take away your education. And but nowadays, in today's society, right, there's a big push, I think, away from formal education. I mean, I have 3 teenagers and our 2 oldest boys. I mean, our oldest is in college, or our second one is still in high school. But, they talk about, how education is garbage and none of it's practical and this and that. And yeah, there is some truth to that. But I think it's, very important to still have a basic education.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, we got to hit a break here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the power of pause during the next segment.
If you would like to reach hundreds of thousands of business owners every week, Mr. Biz Radio can help. Our show airs globally 7 days a week for more than 25 hours across several internet radio stations, plus 20 plus podcast platforms. Also, video exposure on the new exclusive Mr. Biz Network streaming channel, which gets blasted to 100 plus streaming platforms, and the Mr. Biz YouTube channel, and our 350,000 social media followers multiple times every week. Join Mr. Biz Nation as an advertiser by emailing us at info@MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit GetPulseTools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Check out all 3 of Mr. Biz's best-selling books at MrBizBooks.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. Again, talking this week with Dr. Emilio Justo. And I want to talk to you, Doctor, about the book, your most recent book, I should say, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. By the way, you can find it on Amazon. And thank you again for a copy. By the way, before I get into this, I can't let this go by. So you guys, if you know anything, you watch the show or whatever, you know we're based around the Columbus, Ohio area, big Ohio State. Before we get on, Dr. Justo has to tell me that he is a Wolverine, and that's why he threw that little jab at me during the first segment about my favorite school. And it's funny, I said, I think we're getting a bad connection. I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but especially the game was just played recently a few weeks ago. So it's still, the wounds are still open, but you know, he took the shot anyway, which I would probably done likewise if it had the result been the opposite. So, but what led to this book? So obviously with your career as a doctor, et cetera, you know, how do you get from that to writing a book like this?
That's a great question, Ken. And really, here's what transpired. First, it wasn't the book, it was my first TEDx. And that came about because one afternoon I was pedaling away on my stationary bike and I was randomly looking through YouTube and I came across one of these infomercials talking about a thought leader type of organization that promotes and helps teach how to land TEDx talks. And I got involved with that. I had always wanted to do that, but I had never taken the time, you know, focusing so heavily on my practice for so many years. But at this stage of my life, I thought, okay, it's time to do that. So as I was doing that, I was reflecting back on my life. You know, as one gets a little older, I suspect I'm a little bit older than you, Ken, and you'll understand that as we get a little bit older, I don't know, I tend to reflect back and I view my own mortality that you know, I'm not going to live forever and I'd like to leave a legacy. And I'm reflecting back thinking, okay, what has contributed the most to what many would perceive as my success? And I think of it as what I call my Cuban triad. And that's self-discipline, number 1, number 2, resilience and perseverance, and number 3, delayed gratification. But as I talked to some folks who have done TEDx's, they said it's too much to discuss in one TEDx, so just select one. And I chose delayed gratification, which was my first TEDx talk. And now it's nearing almost 7 million views. And then after that started going viral, my wife actually suggested to me, hey, you know, why don't you consider writing a book? And heck, I've never written a book before. This is all new. But so I started doing that and I just buckled down, man. Every single weekend, that's all I did is work on that book. And I cranked it out in, I don't know, probably 4 months. And it was basically to leave what I consider to be a legacy to our 3 children, teenage children, as well as perhaps someday grandchildren, et cetera. So I just wanted to leave behind kind of my success principles. And furthermore, I decided after writing the book that I wanted to narrate it. And so I did my own narration. It's on Audible as well. And the reason again for that is I wanted to leave it with my voice as a legacy for future generations, both family and non-family members. So that was really the underpinnings of why I wrote the book.
Well, it's interesting and I resonate. That's why I've been nodding my head the entire time. I had written 2 books and then my most recent book, which is a couple of years ago now, but that's exactly what happened for me. I got asked to come, similar, not a TEDx, but I got asked to come and speak in front of a group and they were having their kind of year-end holiday party. And, you know, my first 2 books are about business stuff, right? And so the guy, the leader of the group said, well, could you come and talk to us? I said, well, people don't want to hear about business stuff at a holiday party. They're going to have a few adult beverages and want to let the hair down a little bit. I said, I got something I you know, been working on. I was talking with some mentees I have, as I've never talked about it before, but if it's cool with you, and it was very similar to what you're talking about. is, sort of the principles that I followed throughout my life to be able to, achieve some pretty cool stuff. And same thing happened. I give this talk. I'd never done it before. And people walk up to me afterwards and they're like, please tell me you have a book that outlines all this. And I said, no. But very quickly, I'm like, I guess I probably should put this on some pages, and the same thing. And it's funny you mentioned about the Audible version and the narration. I had, I've narrated all 3 of my books on Audible as well. But, and one of the things was I was told by sort of a branding person, like, especially because I do a lot of video, I have the show, we've been on the show for over 8 years now. People are accustomed to hearing my voice that, that follow me or whatever, and they might get the narration. And if it's not my voice, it might seem like somewhat inauthentic. That being said, I got pitched by someone who's a voice over specialist person, and he had a British accent. I got to tell you, Dr. Justo, he sent me a little reading. It sounded way cooler with his voice than mine, but nonetheless, I did it myself. But very interesting. So you mentioned there's a couple others, and I know we're going to talk about some of that as well later. But you seem to have really gravitated towards the delayed gratification. I know you had mentioned 2 others as well. Are there plans for books around those as well, or no?
Well, I do actually want to write another book in 2025. I'm not certain yet of the topic. I may use that topic. I may intermix it with a little bit of that Cuban triad I referenced. I just recently, a couple months ago, went to Cambridge University in the UK and gave a talk on my Cuban triad. It's called Mastering the American Dream, the Cuban Triad for Triumphant Success. And so I might base it on something like that. But it's really a wonderful tool. It's a creative way of getting your feelings and your expressions out. Something I never really had the time to do before, but now, even though I'm still working full time, I'm just devoting myself to doing these different things, to speaking, appearing on wonderful shows like your own, and putting my thoughts on paper. And again, it's a great journey. I'm really blessed to be having it.
Yeah, and we've only got about 2 minutes left here, so this might be, we have to continue this in the next segment. But tell us, so what is your sort of definition of delayed gratification, right? Because I think the obvious one, right? People understand, but where do you fall on that sort of scale of delayed gratification?
Yeah, so the first thing I would tell everyone is when I preach delayed gratification, you have to understand 2 things. Number one, delayed gratification certainly has been part of my lifelong journey, but it wasn't by choice. It was because I was a Cuban refugee and an immigrant, and we had nothing. So by default, I had to learn delayed gratification on a subconscious level. But what I mean by delayed gratification is simply resisting the temptation for some of those immediate pleasures in favor of a later, oftentimes greater reward. And I think it's extremely powerful. I personally don't think it's talked about enough. And delayed gratification really thrives on what I feel is clarity. When you vividly, visualize your future, doesn't matter if it's in the business world like you can, or financial freedom, what have you, it becomes easier to say no to some of those short-term temptations if you have the long road ahead that you're thinking about. So if you write down your goals and you keep them visible on a regular basis, it's much easier to fuel that self-discipline and that delayed gratification. But it's a hard concept to teach. I'll be the first to admit it. I try and teach it to our boys, and they shake their head and they acknowledge it and they say, "Oh yeah, I understand," but yet their actions don't align with that. So very difficult in today's society.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. All right, guys, we're going to hit another break here. We're going to come back, continue talking with Dr. Justo, and we're going to find out more about foundations of success and embracing self-discipline.
How would you like to have direct access to Mr. Biz to help you run your business more profitably and more efficiently? At MrBizSolutions.com, you get live access to not only Mr. Biz, but also several of his hand-picked and trusted business experts, each with 20 plus years of experience to help you optimally manage and grow your business. That's just the start of where Mr. Biz Solutions begins. Learn more at MrBizSolutions.com. That's MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. we have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right, only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit GetPulseTools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Got a question for Mr. Biz you want answered on air? Email it to info@MrBizSolutions.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. Again, talking this week with Dr. Emilio Justo. I should mention, you can find out more about everything he's got going on his website. That's dremiliojusto.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. You can also follow him on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, and YouTube. So definitely go out and check out some of that. I may have been, cyber stalking as I was preparing for the show. But a lot of good information out there. Plus, you can also find out where he's speaking next and things like that. If it's somewhere around you, might be able to go check him out and watch him speak, deliver some of these powerful messages. But so from the book, again, check out the book, The Power of Pause. You can find it on Amazon. You mentioned in the book, you talk about foundations of success. How do you define, what are your foundations, I should say, of foundations of success?
Oh, great question, Ken. I mean, there's a few that come to mind. First, the title of the book, The Power of Pause. Well, I feel that one needs to embrace that pause in order to be able to conquer impulses. And in life, we're all subject to it. Life tempts us to just act instantly without thinking. But if you can intentionally pause, you give yourself time to really reflect and evaluate whether those immediate desires that you want now, whether they align with your long-term goals. And they don't always. So the ability to be able to just step back and reflect on what truly matters allows one to kind of avoid those impulsive decisions that might derail your journey to success and to stay committed to what truly matters. Another, I think, foundational principle, in my view, is that one needs to be able to break down those big challenges from what I call a mountain into small pebbles. So large goals, which I'm a huge believer in setting large goals, lofty goals. I think too often when we set goals, we set goals that are too easily achieved. So I think large goals are important, but they can feel overwhelming. So, by using self-discipline and conquering one small task, one small goal at a time, that's huge. When you break down those aspirations into more smaller, more manageable milestones, and then you celebrate each milestone, right? Because by celebrating, that gives you momentum, it gives you positive energy. So that consistent, disciplined progress, no matter how small, can create unstoppable momentum. I also like to focus on resilience, right? Because resilience, a lot of people talk about it, but resilience, in my view, is built on setbacks, right? So we need to be able to embrace failures, right? Failure is not a bad word. It's not a negative word. We have to reframe those setbacks as what I call temporary steps back and opportunities to learn and grow and propel ourselves into bigger, more bold decisions and success. So that grit to bounce, not just bounce back, but bounce forward after every step back or setback, however you want to call it, that separates those who achieve success versus those who just surrender themselves to that immediate comfort. Also, my second TEDx talk, I talked about it's called Unleashing the Drive Within, the Obsession Advantage to Unprecedented Success. Now I just checked yesterday, actually before the show, and I think it just hit 3 million views, so it's incredible. But anyhow, by channeling obsession, because when I talk about obsession, which I'm a firm believer in being, I hate to stereotype, but being Cuban, Cubans are obsessed and passionate. And when I speak of obsession, I'm not talking about a psychiatric condition. I'm not talking about being OCD. I'm talking about having an obsessive drive that can be your superpower. So when you align passion with purpose, it propels you towards a goal that really matters. So when your focus is unwavering, right? You're dead set focused on something. It's rooted in self-discipline. You can outlast the distractions and outperform the competition. And to me, it's all about obsession. And my wife will tell you, because she's always told me how obsessed I am. And it's the truth. I mean, it's just something, for me, it's something that has come innately. And probably the last thing I would just say, Ken, is that I don't feel enough is talked about in terms of patience, right? So again, going back to that power of pause. In today's society, in today's world, we're just run. And I get it. I mean, I run as well. But sometimes you just gotta chill and be patient, reflect, take some time to maybe journal, take some time to self-reflect. I mean, take some time to meditate. And when I say meditate, I'm not talking about, going, I mean, everyone has their own form of meditation. Being an only child, I'm used to that meditation because I have no problem going into a room by myself, maybe dim the lights and just close my eyes and think about the things I need to do, think about my future, think about my challenges. So writing down those goals, creating a vision, reflecting on those goals and your written word, that can fuel that self-discipline that ultimately will push you forward to succeed.
Yeah, I love that. So Sarah Blakely, who started the company Spanx and now has another new company, new venture, but she talks about what you just mentioned, Dr. Justo, and that is once a quarter, she takes a long weekend where she goes to somewhere off the beaten path all by herself. No kids, no husband, no anything. And that's sort of her form of meditation. And she said, that's where I come up with my best ideas because I'm not distracted by anything. She said, I have designated times, like I don't have my phone, there's no television, there's no anything, but to be with myself and, be out in nature and things like that. But she said, that's not the, meditation type thing, but that's her form of meditation where she comes up with a lot of her great ideas. Because as you mentioned, she said, in everyday life, you're just constantly on the go and it's difficult sometimes to slow things down, what you're talking about, to allow your brain to sort of catch up and to process some of the things that are going on. And so I think that's super powerful. And she's obviously used it to be massively successful. So there's definitely something there.
Fully agree. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So we've got a couple minutes here, but what are maybe one or two things that you would suggest that our viewers, our listeners, if they want to really start to embrace some of the self-discipline, what are maybe one or two practical things they can do to say, man, I've really had difficulty staying focused and having that self-discipline? What are one or two things they might be able to do or put into practice to get better at that?
Well, I think one has to really sit down and introspectively create your long-term goals and then like I said, break them down. So I think too often life goes by, and because we're so busy, right? All of us. I mean, I can't imagine there's anyone out there that doesn't feel that they're super busy, but you've got to just pause, reflect, and you've got to really clearly set out your long-term goals and then break them down into smaller, more manageable chunks, and then chart your progress regularly, right? You have to be able to chart that progress. If you just write them down and you just forget about it, that's no good either. And then as you chart your progress and as you reach those little individual steps, individual milestones, you pat yourself on the back, you give yourself a high five, and then you keep pushing and moving forward. So you got to start with the small stuff. It doesn't just happen overnight the way my kids think it does. I mean, you've got to start with small things to prioritize that daily self-discipline. And as you know, Ken, I mean, you've been on this earth long enough. One has to work hard through that self-discipline. You got to have that grit. You got to have that passion. You got to have that obsession. You got to be disciplined in everything you do. You just can't be lazy about it. I hate using that term, but I think our society as a whole, right? I don't want to generalize to everyone, but as a whole, I mean, we kind of have a lazy society, and especially now with the woke society, it's they don't want to work. So work is key.
Yeah, definitely. We're out of time here, Dr. Justo. I really appreciate you coming on the show, though. Fantastic information.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate being with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And don't forget, as always, cash flow is king.
To become part of Mr. Biz Nation, follow him on all social media platforms or never miss a show by going to MrBizRadio.com. If you prefer free video content, visit the Mr. Biz YouTube channel or check out his streaming channel, which is available on 100 plus streaming platforms at MrBizNetwork.com.